Welcome in everyone to the Hawk's Eye podcast. I am your host, Bryce Coots, and you guys have asked for it. I've had him on before, but I'm bringing him back again just as we're getting ramped up for training camp. Bobby Peters is here to discuss all things Seattle offense. We're going to get Bobby's take on what Klint Kubiak was able to do so well last year, how he helped Darnold take a leap, what he did to unlock JSN, as well as what were some of the run game identities for Seattle. And then also, before Bobby gets out of here, we're going to ask him what Brian Fleury could bring to Seattle from his time in San Francisco and how maybe this system might even evolve even more with him at the helm going forward into 2026. But before we do that, just make sure if you guys haven't already, head on up to that QR code in the top corner of your screen. Scan that code. That'll take you to all things Hawk's Eye. If you guys are watching this on Twitter over there, make sure you hop on over to the YouTube page. Like, subscribe, do all those great things. It helps grow this channel, push it out more into that algorithm right now. But now that that's taken care of, we'll be talking to Bobby right after this.
That's all we do, baby. It's our time.
Seattle defense continues to have a night. Their sixth sack.
First and 10 at the Seattle 44. Here comes the blitz. May. Handy tries to throw. Ball comes out. Going the other way with it. Turning up the field. Shannon Oyster. And he scores. Touchdown. Play faking him. Sanders going to roll left. Looking. Sam throw. Back in the end zone. Is it caught? Is that it is? Touchdown! Seahawks!
We did not care. It's about us. It's always been about us and what we do. And now we're going to the Super Bowl.
And with me is my guest, Bobby Peters here from Alert the Post. Bobby, it's been a while, but how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Bryce. How about yourself?
Oh, not too bad. I'm really excited for this conversation. I know it's something my viewers have been really excited about. They've been asking me constantly, when am I getting Bobby back on to talk about Seahawks offense and all the different things that work so well? So let's kind of start there. You obviously have just released a book kind of going on about Klint Kubiak's offensive game plan, especially what he was able to do in the red zone with the passing game, which you said is probably some of the best stuff you've seen as of late. Did you expect to see that when Klint Kubiak took over Seattle last year going into that season, or did you kind of expect it to kind of be similar to what you had seen in New Orleans?
So honestly, I didn't watch a ton of Saints tape the previous year. So when I decided to poke around, I saw on Twitter throughout the seasons, people were posting Seattle clips. I'm like, I might have to take a look at their offense, later in the spring. And when I turned on the tape, I was very pleasantly surprised at what I found. So obviously he's a Shanahan guy. But what he did was he took, especially like within the even play action too, but especially within the drop back game, kind of like the 3-step, the 5-step, and the 7-step stuff. He took the traditional Shanahan ideas and would tweak them, ever so slightly to kind of combat what modern defenses are doing. And Sam Darnold was able to execute it brilliantly throughout the season. So that and the red zone stuff, which obviously, I believe we'll touch on it in a little bit here, were the things that stuck out to me. And, I think I don't know what percentage of the book focuses on that, but a very good, healthy percentage focuses on those things.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the coolest things that obviously happened last year for Seattle's offense was obviously JSN, Offensive Player of the Year, on probably the least amount of dropbacks for what he was able to produce, right? They weren't a high volume passing offense in Seattle, but they were an extremely effective one when it became their opportunities to throw the ball. And I think the one thing a lot of Seahawks fans were expecting when Kubiak came here was, hey, we're going to get really good at running the ball. And that didn't really happen for Seattle till the playoffs kind of set in and they were able to kind of pick it up and get going in that regard. Throughout most of the year, it was really on JSN's back and Sam Darnold's decision-making through most of the year. And we kind of saw moments where it struggled, obviously the game in LA. But then when it flourished, you saw those, NFC championship kind of games. So first things first here, Bobby, I know you gave me some diagrams here to kind of discuss. So I'm going to bring up one of the plays that you sent me. And I kind of want you just to walk through my viewers on this one.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about, Sam Darnold, and obviously he had success in Minnesota, but I felt like he was even more efficient with the Seahawks last year in general. I think his ability to work, given any pass concept, right? Kind of the Shanahan-McVay style is like, all right, here's a pass concept. It's called, many of them are called what you call pure progression. So the quarterback's going to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just kind of scan across the field. And that's, and ideally you're going to have an answer for every coverage. And that's great if your quarterback can handle it. And Sam Darnold can handle it. So this is a great example here. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a classic like two-man stick or spot concept. All right. So what we're trying to do here is we're stressing the flat defender. So in this example, it's the nickel. Okay. The nickel expands with that arrow route. So we should be able to hit that stick route right behind it. Well, the defense allocates a hook defender. In this case, it's the strong safety driving down. So they take it away. So with two underneath defenders, they're able to take this away. Well, a lot of old school West Coast offenses will have stick on both sides of the field. So after the quarterback exhausts those options, he's got nowhere to go with the ball. But something that Kubiak does really well is he attaches nice backside progressions for his quarterbacks. And here's a good example of a common one that they would use, what I refer to in the book as kind of the through return combination. So the through route here is the Z receiver, so the outside receiver all the way to the left. So he has freedom to run to cross the face of the near safety, and he's the next read in the progression, right? So if there's space behind that strong safety, that through route is gonna take it. In this example, the middle linebacker, gets depth, so the return route opens up underneath him. So this is the fourth read in Sam Darnold's progression, and he's able to work the read and find the open guy, even when the defense takes away the first three guys that he's looking at.
Well, and the thing I really like about this design, Bobby, you kind of talk about that with the West Coast offense. It's very much in their quick game. It's a very much a mirrored thing. It's not really true pure progression. It's very mirrored. So if you get stick flat on one side, you're getting stick flat on the other, maybe with the back doing something kind of unique, whether it's motioning out and running a vertical shot or just something to kind of add a little flair to it. But this is really interesting to your point, because what you're really allowing is you're allowing for a quick read concept to become a pure progression. Great. That, strong safety doesn't buzz down into that and take away that stick. We can throw that all day by stressing that flat defender. But in this case, to your point, giving an answer to Sam, now it goes, okay, that's not there. Now I know where I'm going to the backside of this, and it's working into his field of vision. It's not routes going away. It's routes working into that field of vision. And
Exactly.
Also with that back swinging, that does stress the will linebacker. Like, how much do I have to expand? And now you've got that through route. Now the Mike picks it up. You got that underneath. And I think we saw Cooper Kupp and these tight ends run that, return route really well, or pivot route, depending on what, offense you're in, run it a lot this year.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's spot on. I love your point about the routes working into his progression, right? Because whenever we want to build a pass play, especially like one of these pure progression varieties, we have to replace defenders that cover up the front side, that cover up the front side. And another common concept and this is something that they found ways to get JSN the ball out of the backfield. Like some of those routes you'd see him run out of the backfield is they'd run him on a choice route, and they'd have the other receiver run a vertical. Now the choice route, it forces the same thing, the hook and the flat players, to squeeze it for it to be covered. So that's another front side combination that they would call with the through and the return. Once again, working to replace those defenders when they commit. Say the defense wants to double team JSN in that case, then they've got those routes working to the vision. If they don't, now JSN's one-on-one, and we all know what he can do one-on-one.
Well, and I think, you mentioned about JSN moving into the backfield. We saw that in the NFC Championship game on the corner route he catches. Basically, they run scissors with the return route underneath with Cooper Kupp, and it really causes that safety an issue where it's, yes, I'm coming down, but who am I coming down to in that responsibility now that I have that scissor concept that's working me vertical? Do I let Cooper Kupp take that return route underneath, which we see him come flying down, eventually leaving JSN in the busted coverage in behind? But I think that was a cool wrinkle that Kubiak did later on in the year, was moving JSN into that backfield, having him come out as a running back almost, causing Mikes and different linebackers a problem with, okay, whose responsibility is he now? It's not truly him just lining up in either the slot or at the wideout spot and going, okay, yeah, we know who we're aligned with.
Exactly.
All right, so let's move to this next one that you've got here for us, which is one of the run plays for Seattle this year that you mentioned to me before we came on, really kind of ones that had the most success with. And I think a prime example of this is the toss play versus the 49ers. I think it was 3rd and 17 in that last regular season game that they converted for a touchdown.
Yep.
Or converted for a first down, sorry.
Yeah. So this play is a variation of crack toss. So Most coaches will define crack toss concepts where you'll have either a receiver or a tight end coming from the outside in to pin the end man on the line of scrimmage, the defensive end, and then you'll pull the tackle around. Now, there's a lot of different ways and variations to dress it up, but that's kind of the core of it, right? We're pinning the end and pulling the tackle around to block either the force or the alley defender. And Seattle ran a lot of really neat variations of this throughout the year, and they were pretty efficient with it too. And this particular one, I think it was a 3rd and 15 conversion. I want to say it was week 17 against Carolina. I'd have to go back and check, but it was a 3rd and long, and the defensive end is pinning his ears back to rush upfield. So the receiver is able to get a good block on him here, and the linebackers are slow to react because they're expecting they're going to drop to their pass windows. So the center is able to get all the way across and get to the play side shoulder of the mic. The tackle leads up for the safety, and before you know it, your defense just gave up a 3rd and 15 on the ground. So, it's an example of a well-designed play, but also a timely play call, right? If you call this on a 1st and 10, the center's never getting to that Mike linebacker, and that Mike's going to scrape over the top and make the tackle like at the line of scrimmage. So, just a great example of play design, but also situational play calling and when to call it.
Well, and I think that's the key thing. You mentioned the Carolina game. Obviously, there was the Week 18 game in San Francisco for basically the division and the number 1 seed, and they ran this with Ken Walker, and exactly that. The linebackers are all starting to turn, get to their spot drops, and all of a sudden Jalen Sundell's chasing you as the center down the middle of the field, run blocking. I think the other thing that's so key about this is how Seattle used condensed splits this year and the motion. So obviously that motion guy generally has been Cooper Kupp. He's one of the guys that is so good at that crack block and sealing. And even Jake Bobo to an extent. It's interesting to me that we're talking about a toss play being so successful for Seattle when one of the main staples that we talked about was, okay, wide zone. They're going to be such a good wide zone team. They're going to be able to do all these things within this offense. And we're talking about basically a pin pull with a crack being one of their more successful plays this year.
Yeah, no, and that was kind of one of my things when I was turning out, like, oh, it's a Kubiak. Here comes, 300 clips of outside zone, right? If not more. But the truth was they were very multiple run scheme, a lot of duo. I have some good duo examples. Counter salad. I actually have a counter salad article coming out on my Substack within the next week or two, breaking down. I think it was a long run against Atlanta with that concept. And then, obviously some other gap scheme stuff too. I think there's a couple power encounters in there, but yeah, it was a lot more multiple than I was expecting and a lot less emphasis on outside zone was certainly in there, but it wasn't like, the old school Kubiak stuff that his father, emphasized for decades.
Well, I think that's a really good point you bring up there, Bobby, is the fact that that's kind of what Seattle fans were promised last year was like, hey, this is what we're going to be. We're going to be this outside team. And a lot of us were like, even content creators, like, okay, let's dive into what Gary Kubiak did in Houston with Arian Foster, because John Benton was his O-line coach there. And then all of a sudden we're seeing, hey, there's counter in here. There's inside zone. There's duo, to your point. There's, a lot of GT counters and pin pull tosses. Like, it was like they started with, okay, we're going to be this. This is what we're going to try and be. But, hey, maybe we have to divert off this and go into a different direction.
Yeah, it was more adjustable week to week based on the defenses that they were seeing, which is good coaching, right? If you have an offensive line that's great at blocking outside zone, all right, we're going to be what the 49ers were for so many years, right? We're going to dress it up, do it differently, and kind of tag it that way, where they saw themselves as, all right, we might got some, we'll be able to do this differently, right? We can get to it with different schemes and kind of attack defenses that way. So that's a sign of quality coaching to be able to pivot. Say your offense line can't dominate on the outside in the wide zones. Well, let's pivot. Let's sprinkle in some gap schemes.
So let's move on to another one here that you sent me here. And this is one that you mentioned how Klint Kubiak was really able to unlock JSN this year in some ways that past OCs haven't been able to in Seattle. So why don't you walk me through this one?
Yeah. So here we have this is one of my favorite play designs from the entire season. I want to say this was like week 4 or week 5. And what it is on the right-hand side here, when with the running back and I believe that's the X receiver on the ball there. That's the classic Shanahan, what I refer to as like the bang pivot or the wrap concept. Okay. It's a high-low on the hook window. In this case, we're running into the passing strength of the formation. So to the 3 receiver side, with one of the receivers being the running back, obviously out of the backfield. And the neat thing here is the inclusion of the double move on the outside. Now, this was JSN. So you've got a concept that works, that's tried and true over the middle. Now, if the defense wants to use a safety to drive on that route, because that's a classic concept, a lot of NFL teams run it, but obviously the Shanahan guys, love it. If they want to do that, you got JSN one-on-one on the outside on a double move here, right? So it's a great way to feature your star receiver as an alert, but still have like a core concept to get the ball out quickly. And another neat element of this this concept is too, or this play design is the use of the tight end in protection. And so we're going to free release the running back, and we're going to use the tight end as the sixth protector. Now the rules change a little bit, and obviously, without getting into Mike declarations and all that stuff here, but what it does in general, what it does is it breaks tendencies, right? Defenses, they blitz the turn of the set, blitz away from the turn of the center. They blitz the running back or whatever tendency they might find with your your usual 6-man protections. When you throw these tight end protections in, it can really, it breaks tendencies, and you're able to pick stuff up a lot easier. And then also too, your tight end is going to check release on the backside. So if nobody blitzes, he'll be able to get out, and now we'll be able to high-low the flat on the other side of the field if the defense wants to push coverage to the passing strength.
Well, and the thing I really like about this, when you talk about the double move here from JSN being that deep, basically a hook at curl at 15, is there may be points in your playbook where that is the route. He is running that curl constantly with the choice route kind of underneath, or the pivot or bang route by the running back with the high-low of that deep dig route. And you're going to kill teams with that again, because if they shoot that outside back going to the flat, then you just throw the curl off the back head of the defender. And then once you get that safety to really cheat, and maybe you get that Mike linebacker to drop and take away the dig and maybe a kind of a cover 2 look or variation, now you take advantage of that hook to curl moment, that alert, and hook to go. That's where, I think to your point, this is where JSN, being such a smart receiver coming out of college, really allows him to flourish, is the ability to kind of read that with Sam. But I do like how you brought up the fact of how they use the tight end to replace the running back in 6-man protection, especially in AJ Barner, who can do that and then get him out into the flat as your check down.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it was and you'll see in the book, I mean, they would adapt this with all their pass concepts. And that was some of my favorite stuff to study. And I try to highlight the different examples too, where defenses, bring pressures that would normally give offenses trouble, but they're able to pick it up with this changeup.
All right. So the last one here that you've got from Kubiak was a red zone, play. And I got a feeling this might be from when they played Houston, potentially, with the route that I'm assuming JSN runs outside as the Z there.
I forget which week. They ran a lot of different double post variations. And so these were some of my favorite stuff. Like, I know you talked about it in the intro. Kubiak did an excellent job in the red zone in general, but with these double post designs and isolating JSN as that outside post runner with his route running ability is second to none. So this is once again another example where we're free releasing the back and using the tight end as that kind of that check release sixth protector. That inside through route there, I believe that's the F receiver occupying the near safety, and JSN from that tight split, he's going to try to sell that outside stem on that corner, get him to widen and then cross his face. And Sam Darnold, with 5 and a hitch, quick timing from under center, is able to let that ball rip.
I think one thing, with this particular play that's so interesting about it is you get the pivot return route from that running back, and they're going to obviously get a bit of a motion call pre-snap to slide out. But the thing that I really like about this design is the fact Sam is under center, that it times up so much better than I'm in shotgun, I'm catching it, and I'm almost taking my 3 and I'm kind of waiting. This is where I think the West Coast offense to this point, and what Bill Walsh talked about all the time, was Joe Montana's feet or Steve Young's feet with the timing and how everything, if you follow the footwork, this is how your progression will work, I think speaks volumes in this play.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think especially in the red zone, right, when you get under center, like red zone, like just straight drop back from under center is underutilized, in recent years. And I think maybe that was another way for them to try to, coax the defense into playing single high, which, obviously will get JSN that one-on-one matchup. So I think that does play a critical role in the timing, but also getting the coverage that they wanted to.
Yeah, and like you said, you get the single high look versus this. You're kind of got your pick of the litter, because whatever the safety picks, he's wrong.
Exactly. Yep.
So, well, I appreciate those, Bobby, but now I kind of want to get your thoughts. Obviously, Klint Kubiak's moved on. He's now the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. He's gone off. He took Rick Dennison and Andrew Janocko over that way. Seattle luckily was able to keep John Benton in a lot of continuity, but they kind of went out of house for their hiring here. And, everyone thought it might be Jake Peets or it might be Justin Outen in there coming in to be the replacement after the Super Bowl. But they go and get Brian Fleury, the tight ends coach from the 49ers. And I know you've done extensive work on Kyle's tree and everything that he's done in regards to his offense. So what can you kind of give us, maybe a little bit more of a deeper dive into what we could expect San Francisco flavor to end up in Seattle's offense? Because it sounds like Fleury wants to keep what Kubiak's got going, but obviously add his own flavor to it.
That's a great question. And this is going to sound, obviously a cop out. I have no idea, right? We just saw Kubiak come in and kind of not do what we were expecting him to do too. And I think part of it is there's so much volume in the Kyle Shanahan system, especially at this point, right? He's been calling his own offense for a while, especially in San Francisco with all those experienced players like Kittle, Juszczyk, CMC. I mean, you're creating brand new game plans every week with, new tags and stuff. So like he could pull from so many different places just within that tree of different concepts to feature. And, obviously he's going to try to fit it to his personnel. And, I guess we'll wait and see. That's the fun, right? We don't know exactly where it's going to go. Like I said, it's kind of a cop out, but I mean, that's kind of the fun of it too. So.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. Like, if you were to peg, though, one thing you think you could see more of after studying what Kubiak did in Seattle, like, is there going to be more motion, you think, to this offense? Because we saw some of it, but it looks like Kyle's maybe moved to even having more usage of the motion in his offense in the last year or two.
Motion and then the under center drop back stuff. So I think I know Purdy likes that under center drop back, and obviously Darnold, we just got done showing an example of him liking it. So even maybe more of an emphasis on that too. I could see that being an uptick. Maybe they do go down more of the wide zone, outside zone route too. That's remained to be seen. But yeah, it's all, trying to stay ahead of defensive trends too, right? So like defenses, they got a year of Darnold and, with Seattle's personnel on tape. How our defense is going to respond. Now Fleury's going to have to respond to that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm super excited. I'm going to camp, obviously, this year for a bit in August there. I'm excited to see what Brian Fleury does. I know there's a lot of fans out there that have a bit of hesitation because he's never called plays before, but I look at who he's been under, what his background kind of is, and who he's also got surrounding him. I think he's going to have a pretty easy transition as it goes from, hey, tight end coach to play caller, more so than some other guys get that opportunity.
Definitely. I think you're picking an apple from the right tree here.
Yeah, exactly. So, Bobby, I know you're busy and you got a whole bunch of stuff, so I really appreciate you coming on, man, and giving me, some of your time today to discuss this kind of stuff and break it down for my viewers, because I know they absolutely love it when you come on and talk X's and O's with me. But before I let you get out of here, why don't you tell the viewers where they can find more of your stuff? Obviously, your books that you've got coming out, as well as your Substack.
Yeah, so probably the best place to find me is on my Substack, alertthepost.com. I try to get 4 or 5 articles out a week. I've got almost 300 individual cut-ups in my cut-up library now, where like they're full season cut-ups of a concept. Say you want to learn more about that bang dig concept, I've got cut-ups, full season cut-ups of the Shanahan guys running that in there. And then also, obviously I've got articles, do stuff in there every week. And then the other place is probably Twitter. I'm pretty active on there too. You can kind of see my new projects, the new books I'm finishing up on there. My handle's B_Peters12. I also post like random diagrams and videos on there from time to time too. So those are the 2 best places. If you're looking for my books, you can find them all on Amazon.
Well, Bobby, again, thank you so much. For everyone that's watching, those links for his books and his Substack will be in the show description below. So, Bobby, obviously, man, I love having you on, love talking ball with you, and hopefully we can do it soon again.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Talk to you later, Bobby. See ya.
Yep.
All right, everybody. That was Bobby Peters joining me from Alert the Post. He's a very busy guy. I know he's in the midst of a move for himself, so he's got, little time to spend, but he was able to spend some of it with us, and I really appreciate it because Bobby does such a phenomenal job with his breakdowns on Substack, as well as what he does with his book. So on Amazon, it is some of the best money you can spend if you want to really dive into what these offenses do. I know he does a variety of them, but really one of his best kind of qualities is his understanding of the West Coast offense, what we run here in Seattle, what McVay runs in Shanahan and that tree. So he's just released a book on what Seattle did last year. If you want to understand it better, I cannot, suggest going and getting those. But obviously, that was one thing that, we talked about having on today, but now we're opening this up. Viewer Q&A. This is going to be my last show for about a week. I will not be back on your airways on YouTube or through Spotify or any of the other audio platforms until probably July 12th or 13th. I actually am going away to coach in what would be considered a national tournament for football. I'm head coach, offense coordinator of our U17 team up here. And we've got a tournament next week. So I'll be traveling up there tomorrow to get situated up there. So I'll be a week away from podcasting. So if anything breaks with Seahawks news, unfortunately, I won't necessarily be able to give you guys my takes on it right away. But if, again, you want my takes, I will be active in Discord and on Twitter. So I'll make sure stuff gets put up there. Maybe I'll try and record something on my phone. I can't guarantee the quality. What I will do, though, is I will make sure the link and how to watch those games, because they will be streamed for free on YouTube, the games I'm coaching in. So if you guys want to watch me as a coach in action and see what I do, you will be able to watch it. I know our first game is July 7th at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free. It's on YouTube. I'll make sure to post the link in here and in the Discord and on my Twitter. So if you guys want to check that out, and see what that's all about. But before we get into ending this show, let's have some fun here. Let's open this up to the floor for all of you guys. I know there's 354 of you. There's probably a good chunk of you guys over on Twitter. Yeah, there's about 300 of you guys over on Twitter. And if you are on Twitter and you do want to have your comments read, just make sure you post on the video thread you're watching there. They will populate in my chat. I will be able to bring them up on screen. But yeah, let's just have kind of an open round table discussion right now for, the next 40 minutes or so, if you guys are up for it. I know it's a little bit earlier than I normally do shows. So one thing I did want to discuss is obviously the Seahawks have their bids in for ownership of the team. They kind of got that all squared away yesterday, or it might have been earlier today, that they got all the bids in for it. I'm kind of interested to see what ends up happening, because I feel like we're going to hear a bunch of names that maybe we weren't anticipating being a part of the bidding process for the Seahawks. I know we've heard the ones, obviously the three main guys that have come up, but I wonder if there's going to be somebody local or that has extremely local ties that's going to come in and buy this team, that maybe even has connections to the Allen family. I get this feeling that there's somebody kind of lurking that everyone doesn't know about and just is going to come out of nowhere and potentially swing in and buy this team. So it would have been awesome if, the Allen family could have held on to this in some respect. I know a lot of people out there saying, hey, why can't Jody just buy the team? Why does she have to give it up? It is part of how trusts are set up in the state of Washington. She cannot legally buy this team. However, there is, obviously a way where if like someone else were to buy it and she wanted to buy back into it that way as a minority owner, maybe, or do something like that, but she cannot outright buy, the Seattle Seahawks. So that's one thing, that's unfortunate, because for me, like, obviously my entire Seahawks fandom, to the point where I remember the Allen family has owned this franchise, and, Paul saved it. Jody kept it going. And for me, even if there is a new owner that comes in, it's kind of one of those weird things where I'm like, I'm always going to think Allen family, Seattle Seahawks. They're just going to go simpatico together. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think this team is going to go for probably about $10 billion. And my only thing is just whoever buys it, leave the group alone. But the front office, John Schneider, and that whole group. I do think, though, it'll be interesting to see how it works for John, because he has such a good relationship with, Burt Cold and Jody Allen and that whole group. He's got to rebuild that entire relationship now with the new ownership group. And it's going to be interesting how that affects, if Seattle is as active as they were in the trade deadlines in the past, if they are as active as they are in free agency, and how they do contracts, because again, that's stuff that the owner's going to have say in when it comes to money and escrow and so on. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. So let's see what we've got in here from you guys in regards to Bobby. Again, absolutely love having Bobby on. Like, it's so easy for me to talk with him about ball, because he gets it. He understands the offensive game the same way I do. One time, I promise, I will get Bobby on for a lot longer than half an hour. I'll try and get him for a good 40 minutes, and we can really dive into it. Hopefully I can get some clips and really can walk through it. And one person I do have to get back on before we start training camp is Coach Derek from All 22 Films. So I will definitely work on making that happen. Couple of these, let's bring them up. So Dogzilla Monster. Hey, Bryce, I can tell that Fleury's beard is growing on you. It is. Fleury's beard is growing on me. I have mine now starting to grow downwards. So it's working. Unfortunately, Dogzilla, like I've got to get a certain brush. Apparently I heard this, the other day, I got to get a brush to draw the hair downward. Currently it kind of curls up underneath. So, but it is growing. It is getting thicker. So hopefully by training camp, it's maybe down, a little bit longer. So we'll see. What else do we got in here? Let's see. We got Amy in the house. We've got Koken. Koken, I know you love the intro, man. I'm going to be working on a new one. It's going to have some of the stuff that this one has. Obviously, it'll have Mike's speech, but maybe throw in a couple different plays in here. Right now, I would say this is my favorite intro that I've built, but obviously, new season, new intro. So I'll be working on one probably for the start of the regular season here, and we'll see how that one turns out. What else do we got in here? We got Jay Scott in here, goes, hey all, hey Bryce and Bobby, finally caught you live. Thanks for the distraction from work. Hey, appreciate it. I appreciate you being here, Scott, and I'm 100% glad I could help distract you from your job. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to make a distraction. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I'm really glad, Bobby was able to do this. He brings a vast knowledge for it. So I'm glad you're able to catch on to the show. What else do we got in here? Let's see. Sees that someone's got a Super Bowl ring. Oh, am I reading this right? Space got my Super Bowl ring yesterday. Wow. That is impressive. Hopefully it looks as nice as the ones that we saw. Obviously the Seahawks get. So that'll be an cool thing to have there. Space is a nice collectible. Let's see what else we got. Oh, we got one here from Brian. Goes, I expect a lot of pre-snap motion, eye candy, under center play action from 22 and 13 personnel sets. So that's something that's been interesting that I've been kind of thinking about in my head of the 22 and the 13 personnel sets. I know that's what a lot of people have a hope for, that Seattle's going to get more into, and I want to see it. But you got to think, when we're in those 13 personnel sets, it's going to limit this receiving core. And if Torrey Horton's healthy and Rashid Shaheed, from all intents and purposes, has gotten a lot of really good chemistry going with Sam and JSN and Cooper Kupp, I think there's going to be a situation where maybe we don't see as much of that as we anticipated, simply for the fact that they're going to want to get some of these other guys involved in this passing game. And this is kind of where, we have so many options now, especially for Arroyo. And, if he obviously has a bit of a breakout, which I'm expecting, because I think Brian Fleury is going to love the fact he's got that much of an athletic tight end room with him and AJ Barner. And, and then he's got the big blockers and like Saubert and Callerup. It's going to lead to a lot of flexibility. I think what you'll see is you may see them line up in something like that, and then they move into a, 21 personnel where all of a sudden they are in 13, but Arroyo shifts out to a receiver spot, and you've got JSN and Arroyo out wide with maybe Barner and Saubert as your two tight ends, or maybe they're in a situation where it's Oots that shifts. I think one thing that, I'm really excited for is seeing Robbie Oots be used more as a non-traditional fullback and more of as an H-back, which is something I think we didn't get to see a lot of last year. Obviously he got injured, but I feel like there was just a lack of two-back usage from the Seahawks in some respects that I was, expecting to see more of. And this is where I think, again, with the Brian Fleury flavor, I think you might see more of 22 than 13, because I think they're going to want to use Oots as a tight end that can, move out from fullback, line up in your, 12 personnel, or, line up in 21 personnel, and then all of a sudden you shift into 12. Or you shift into a bit of, 11 personnel, because maybe, hey, Robbie Oots lines up as the inline tight end and Barner kicks out to the slot. Like there's different things that they're going to be able to do with some of this personnel. So it's going to be very interesting. But that's a really good point, Brian, that you bring up there. Let's see. Scott brings up a good point, goes, even McVay and Shanahan had to be first-time play callers. Totally agree. And again, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, McVay went from being a tight ends coach to play caller. That was his kind of, jump there when Kyle left Washington. He was the tight ends coach, and he ended up being, and this is for me, like, I've done a bit of a deep dive on play callers and the history behind them, and ones that have been successful and ones that haven't. And there's kind of an interesting thing when you look at a lot of play callers that have developed really good systems. There's kind of two groups they come out of. They either generally come out of being like, hey, I was a quarterback and a quarterback coach, and then moved my way up to passing game coordinator and so on, or they were O-line tight end. And the reason I say tight end in this, and why I think tight end, coaches have such a unique ability to be good offensive coordinators, is their position group is the one that is literally involved in everything. They are involved in the run blocking, because either they're inline blockers generally, right? They're additions to the line of scrimmage and the offensive line. They're involved in the pass game as pass blockers for one. They have to do that too, but they also got to run routes, and you get them involved in play action. So they have to understand everything that is going on within the offense. Receivers, it's like, okay, yeah, I block the guy in front of me and I run my route. Like, that's all I care about. They don't have to know what's going on within the front seven box, because really, very rarely are they blocking in there. Running backs, it's, hey, I'm running here, or what's my option route that I've got. Tight ends and quarterbacks and offensive line generally have to understand everything, and more so tight ends and quarterbacks, because they are in both facets of the game so much. So it's really interesting, and this is where I look at like a guy like Brian Fleury, 7 years as a tight ends coach, probably helped coach and produce one of the best tight ends of all time in George Kittle. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do, because he's going to have, again, from his defensive analytic time when he was an analytics coach to now, he's going to have such an interesting perspective on how to attack defenses that maybe we haven't seen yet. And this could be a really interesting. Can you imagine if Brian Fleury is the next offensive-minded genius, and you have him and Mike on the same staff for maybe 2 years together, where you have a guy that's as good offensively, potentially, or close to a McVay, Shanahan, paired with the defensive equivalent of Mike McDonald? How scary that could really be. That's going to be interesting. Let's see. What else we got here? Space. I loved it when I know you're talking about Purdy here, Space. I appreciate that. Also a good one from Scott here. We go, the difference with Fleury versus others like Grubb is he's been around the NFL for a long time, has experience, but hasn't called plays. Exactly. Ryan Grubb coming from college, it is a vastly different game. It's like, to be honest with you, it'd be like a coach from the CFL coming down and trying to be an offensive coordinator right away. We saw a bit of that with Mark Trestman, but he at least had NFL experience prior to going to Canada and then coming back. But even still, that conversion from coming from Montreal back to Chicago, there's a bit of a learning curve there, because, again, there's just so many different nuances to the game. Like, one big thing in the Canadian game, and if you guys end up watching any of the games I'm coaching, is all of our wide receivers can be in motion at the same time. So one of the advantages to the Canadian game, in the passing game at least, is so we only have to have 7 players on the line of scrimmage. So obviously you have 5 offensive linemen and 2 wideouts. Those wideouts can move in and out on the line of scrimmage and don't have to set ever. But then we also have what we call slot backs. And so they're 3, essentially the equivalent of a tight end, a little bit faster than the traditional American style tight end. But they can have anywhere from 7 to a 10-yard sprinting head start towards the line of scrimmage from behind the quarterback, and hit that at the line when the quarterback says hot, they will hit the line of scrimmage at full speed. So as a defender, you've got this guy that is legitimately running at you full speed into his route from the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have to get up to speed after 5 yards. He is at speed when he hits the line. So for a play caller, it gives you a lot of freedom, right? You can do a lot of different things, having unlimited motion to create mismatches and so on, which makes the Canadian game unique in its own right. So that's where you see kind of, even from the college game, the fact of how wide the field is, hashes, can make a difference in it. So I agree with you. This is where Fleury, I think, has a big advantage over Grubb when he took over. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, here we go. Brian, I wouldn't expect Jody to try and buy back the whole thing anyway. She's 67. I don't think she wants to be that involved beyond a small minority ownership. Yeah, I could see the being a small minority owner. I think she still loves the team and wants to be around it in some capacity. But I agree with you, Brian. I don't think she wants to be in a situation where she is in a full-blown ownership role for sure. This is true, Scott. Yeah. All the AI posts and all the rumors. I'm paying attention to certain news outlets like a Bloomberg or a Wall Street and things that are more business centric to really get my information from that. And then obviously there's Seahawk reporters that will get tipped off on certain things that you can kind of pay attention to. But I guarantee it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And I get this feeling, that somehow it's going to time up perfectly with Hard Knocks, that the new owner is going to come in and there's going to be an episode about the entirety of the new ownership. Like it's going to time out perfectly to maximize publicity for Hard Knocks at that time. Yeah, and this is too, Scott. As long as the new owners recognize they are buying successful, well-run organizations, stay hands off, I'm happy. Yep. Brian, I appreciate you coming to my defense, man. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know if it'll ever look the same as Fleury, but I'm going to grow the beard as much as I can. And I also have to, at the same time, I got to make sure that, the wife's okay with how I'm growing the beard. Because, there is that whole thing about happy wife, happy life. I don't want my wife giving me shit for how my facial hair looks. That's just going to be awful for me. Let's see. What else do we got here? Appreciate it, Scott. I can't even grow a beard, so you've got me beat, Bryce. Appreciate it. Brian comes in with Ballmer may swoop in last minute. He just didn't want to be the first bidder because he didn't want to outbid himself. So this is something I've been hearing too in the background through people that I know are connected. Is that may be a possibility. Nothing confirmed, obviously. If Steve Ballmer ended up buying the team, I think he'd be kind of top of my list, just local ties. You look at how he's run the Clippers organization down there. He's done a very good job staying kind of hands off. Now, the one thing we're going to see more with whoever the new owner is for the Seahawks, they're probably going to be more in the media light than we've been accustomed to with Paul and Jody, right? Like you very rarely ever saw Paul Allen. I think, you can count on your hand probably the amount of times you saw Paul Allen publicly out and about for the Seahawks, raising the 12th man flag at one point or another. But you never saw him at press conferences. You never saw Jody at press conferences. Like you think about some of the different NFL teams and organizations where you've seen, obviously Jerry Jones is an exception to that role, but you've seen other owners be involved when, hey, there's a new hiring of a coach. They're sitting up there in the front of the press with the GM and the coach. Like we've never seen that from Jody or Paul and that group. So that'll be something I think there'll be a bit of a change for us. But as long as, again, they don't touch anything on how this car runs, you just leave it alone and you do small maintenances when asked upon, you're good. Let's see. Oh, this one's from Amy here. The hope that if Fleury is decent, that he will stay an extra year is very low. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the NFL world we live in, Amy, and you're 100% right. That if he's good, it's really up to if he wants to turn down a job. Now, that's the one thing I think that's going to be kind of interesting with Brian Fleury is after 1 year, does he think he's ready to be a head coach? He's been a position coach for 7 years. This is his first opportunity. He may go, I need a year or two to really understand how to run the organization. Because again, this is where that stepping stone, part of coaching is so important to understand is positional coaches, you really just focus on your group. That's really your whole objective. Focus on your group. You're not really dabbling in a whole bunch of other things. When you become that offensive coordinator, now you're in control of that whole department, right? That entire offense flows under you. Sometimes you can be a great play caller, but struggle in the aspect of running that room. And so that's where I think, Mike struggled with that, going from coordinator to head coach that first year. And I think that's where Leslie Frazier really helped Mike, obviously. And we've seen that, and he's alluded to that. And, when you watch that recent episode with him and the sports psychologist that they have with the Seahawks, he really talks about how he struggled with some of those, things about how do I bring this all together It's not just the one group I'm now dealing with everything. And how do I get together? And so Brian Fleury may look at it and be like, hey, yeah, if I have great success, awesome. But I may not be ready to take on the entirety of the running of the football team. I still need to nail away how I'm doing things just with the offensive alone. But you could be very well right, Amy, that he jumped ship the minute he has a good year. So hopefully we can hang on to him for a bit if he's good. Let's see. I like this one from Space. Bottom line, the Seahawks are going to be bought by the MOB off. Yeah, that's fair. Dogzilla goes, Gates and Allen grew up across the fence from the UW student housing my family lived in for a time. They were close starting in their teens and went to the same school in Windmere. Okay, so there's quite the connection there. Interesting. Thank you for that, Dogzilla. Windermere. I like this one from you, HHJ. The guys it's obvious he's going to buy the Hawks. It's Scrooge McDuck. Well, at that rate, then you know what? Maybe Bruce Wayne comes up out of nowhere and buys the Seahawks because he just decides he's bored of being Batman and wants to own a football franchise instead. Let's see. Oh, I agree with you 100%, Brian. You don't want Jerry Jones. No, what I meant by the Jerry Jones example is someone that's always present in front of the media. Sorry if I didn't clarify that properly, but that's what I more or less meant, is someone that's always in front of the media, has to have it on them. The Allen family's been the complete opposite. They're like, nope, good, like minimal, if ever, we have to be shown. But you see the other franchises, owners are involved in those press conferences. That's the one thing I think you'll see from Seattle's new owners. They'll want to be involved in those press conferences. So, yeah. So, guys, obviously we've been at this for coming up here on an hour. If you've got any other questions or that you want answered, feel free to shoot them into the chat here, and any super chats are always appreciated. But one thing I will bring up right now, too, is if you guys are going to Seahawks training camp this year, or you're going to go to FanFest, myself, Mookie Alexander, Dan Viens from the Seahawks Syndicate, we are going to be live on location from August 5th to August 8th, I guess, to the end of FanFest. We're going to two of the practices, August 5th and August 7th. We'll be at both those practices. And then August 5th and 6th, we are doing live shows from Fast Fashion Brewing. So if you're in the area and you want to stop by, we'll be doing live shows in the evening, probably starting around 6 o'clock, 6:30. But the big one is obviously, and I will have a graphic that I will start putting up on my socials and such. I don't have it currently constructed, but on August 7th at 7 p.m. at Fast Fashion Brewing in Soto, we're going to have our town hall. And that's the one thing I really want to push is I want to see as many of you Hawkeye listeners out there and, coming out and, answering questions. We're going to give a mic to the audience so you guys can, pass it around, ask your questions to us. We might invite a couple of you up even onto the stage to be a part of the show because we will be live streaming at a point. And then obviously we want to, hang out and talk Hawks with you guys and other things. Obviously it's amazing the amount of interaction we get with you guys virtually and all the great comments you guys put out there. But I personally want to meet you guys in person. I know last year I got to meet, X-Wing. I got to meet Amy. It was absolutely awesome meeting, you guys in person. And I hope to be able to meet more of you guys in person. So if you live in the Seattle area or just on the outskirts of it, please stop by. It's not going to cost you anything to stop by. But yeah, there's good beer there at this place. They've got good pizzas. There's a huge back room that we do the show in. So we'd love to have you guys there. We might even have some guests stop by along the way, as well. So we'd love to have you guys there. And then obviously on the Saturday, on the 8th, we're going to be doing kind of I guess you call it a pregame show, but it's not really because it's Football Fan Fest. A pre-Fan Fest show is what we'll call it. Again, at Fast Fashion, 2:30. So if you guys are heading down there for I think it starts at 5:20 Fan Fest. We'll have, a show there. So again, stop in. We'll talk about some of the things we're looking for at FanFest. yeah, if you see us in the stands at FanFest, come up, say hi. Love to interact with you guys. And I know Dan's going to have a few giveaways for FanFest, I believe, that are going to have syndicate stuff as well. So, if you guys like our syndicates logo, I think there's going to be some gear with that on it as well for giveaways. So again, just big thing I want to say is I appreciate everything that you guys do to help grow my channel, to be a great presence in it. And, whether it's Discord, whether it's through Twitter, whatever, I'm so appreciative of you, the viewers, because you really make this happen. I could be just some random dude talking into a mic for nobody to listen to. But you guys have helped me grow my channel from last year where I had to restart it all to where it is now. And I can just tell that it's going to keep growing. And I am so appreciative to all of you guys that support it, that watch it. Like, at the end of the day, without you guys, it means nothing. So I really appreciate it. What else do we got in here? We've got a couple more questions. We got WD4 goes, there's an equal chance of the next owner being great as there is being awful. Well, very true. Likely somewhere in the middle, and Schneids is going to elevate the front office. I think we're good. Go Hawks. I would agree with that. I think the one biggest thing here for the owner coming in is there is so much stability. And I don't know if any of you guys have watched Before the Noise episode that came out yesterday. One thing that I thought was really interesting was when you listen to the scouts talk about the way that front office is constructed, how long they've all been together, how they know how each other thinks. It truly is a family. And I think that's one of the unique things Schneider's done, where some of these front offices and scouting department and pro personnel department, they have such an overturn of people, right? If it's not successful within 2 years, see it, we're getting somebody else. Schneider has done such a good job developing people and kind of going for the long game rather than, hey, instant success right here and now and having it be flash in the pans. And we've seen that where he kind of revised things. They've changed how they did things. Now they've gotten into this new way of doing things out of the Pete era. I think that's what makes Schneider so special, is his belief in the development, not just the instant gratification that you get with instant success. Brian here. Bryce, always appreciate your presence. We'll miss you, but looking forward to all your camp coverage, or CC's ramping up between now and camp. Yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to have a couple different shows that'll start coming out. Thinking of doing one probably when I get back on July 12th or the 13th. Before I have to unfortunately go away for a work summit conference in Edmonton. But I'm probably going to do a show where I'm going to come up with maybe the top 20 most intriguing Seahawks going into camp. Might make it a 2-parter show. So that'll be one. And then, I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up for you guys this year. I know myself and Brandon Kane are really going to work on doing some film breakdown shows together, which will be a lot of fun to do because I know Brandon sees the game very similar to me. So we'll be doing a lot of that throughout the upcoming year, as well as, some things on my own when it comes to film breakdowns, maybe some short live shows. That's one thing I'll say. The show will always stay as a live show. It just works better for me. I really like the engagement I get with all of you. I know a lot of other content creators like doing the pre-recorded stuff. For me, with my life and everything, it just makes it so hard. And that's why, I love doing the live shows where I can just set up a time, go for it, talk with you guys about it. And then from there, I put it out on the audio platforms, and I will be working at time stamping these shows going forward. So it's a lot easier for you guys if you miss them to kind of click at the points you want to and follow along that way. That's going to be one thing. And then the other thing I'm going to start looking into is maybe potentially opening up a membership program. Potentially, I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but maybe that's something I look at some point throughout this upcoming season here. So, but again, Brian, I always appreciate you and what you bring to the show. WD Ford, I'll be drunk in the parking lot of Dino's as well, in case anyone is looking for me. Well, I do know, I think after one of the 2 practices, and maybe even that Thursday, we will be heading to Dino's WD Ford. So maybe you can catch me and Mookie and Dan there, because I believe we're staying in the Renton area anyway. So maybe we'll catch you over there. Oh, this is a good one from Seatown fan. How many tight ends do we keep? Ooh, I know I just did a recent roster projection show, I believe with Mookie, and I think we ended up keeping 4. I think, was it 4 or was it 3? Callerup was the one that we were kind of tossing and turning on if we kept him or not, because it depends on if they view Brady Russell as a tight end and how they want to keep him on the roster. So I would say minimum 3, maximum 4, but that fourth one's going to be up in the air. I truly think, C-Town fan, where they probably would love to keep Caller up there, but then I think, honestly, the linchpin in this, to be brutally honest, is going to be what Zach Charbonnet's health, because that'll affect your running back numbers. And if he's healthy to go at the beginning of the year, that could change everything when it comes to the tight end. Because I only think they're going to keep 5 receivers on the active roster. I think they'll try and get some guys through, but I think your 5 active receivers, we already know who they are. It's JSN, it's Shaheed, it's Horton, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Jake Bobo. And then I think that 6th spot's going to be a rotating door of practice squad elevations, potentially, depending on how many safeties they keep and stuff on the defensive side. So Brian says, I bet we keep 5. Maybe. Yeah, it's all going to depend on the numbers and the Charbonnet factor. Let's see. No, I'm not leaving C-Town. No. I'm not leaving. I am covering the Seahawks. Do not worry. I am not leaving. No. I am just taking a vacation, so to speak. I'm just taking a week off. That's all. That's all that's going on. So don't worry. I am not going anywhere. Let's see. Bryce, his wife has, yes, my wife is the best at picking out the hats. I'm sure when I'm down there for Fan Fest and so on, again, she'll find me a couple new hats. So that's going to be kind of the next thing is that. And who knows, maybe I'll look through my, collection of ones that I haven't really worn or anything like that and see if there's some duplicates that I can, because I believe I have a couple duplicates. Maybe if I have any duplicates I've never worn, maybe I'll give some of those away that at the Fan Fest potentially, or the town hall. But yeah, no, my wife is, you're right, Ford. She is the best. This is one of her like $10 hat finds, which, by the way, I actually love this hat because it's the state of Washington. It's got an NFL and Seahawks logo in silver. It's probably one of my favorite hats, and I just recently got it actually. So Amy goes, this is better live. I agree, Amy. It's why the show is always going to be in this format. Let's see what else. Oh, we got soccer going on. Ford goes, yes, membership option, please. I'd love to do it, Ford, and I want to figure out how, but I want to make sure it's worth your guys' money. That's the key thing for me, is if I'm going to go down this route, and I know we did it on Hawk Zone when I was on that show. I want to make sure with what I'm doing for the membership, it's worth your guys' money, because it doesn't make sense for me to do it if the content isn't going to be good enough for what the membership program is supposed to be. So this is where I got to do some brainstorming. I got to figure it out on how I want to do this, but I'm never going to be the type of individual where I'm just going to put things out there just to collect money. I want to make sure what you as the viewers are paying, you're getting back. And that's the biggest thing for me. Oh, well, Cool Breeze comes in and says, France smokes Sweden. Oh, yes. Soccer. I keep forgetting the World Cup's on. I'm one of those people, honestly. I forget the World Cup's on all the time. Let's see. Oh, Amy goes, I kept 4 when I did one. I'm guessing your 4 were Barner, Arroyo, Callerup, and Saubert, Amy, I'm guessing. We got DJ in here going, I see 4 tight ends. They're going to need so many for this offense, in my opinion. Potentially, yeah. C-Town goes, I know I'm in the minority, but I'm not a big Brady Russell fan. I think Brady Russell's an interesting case, because I feel like he's going to be on the roster until they fully understand what they're doing with Robbie Hoops. And I think Brady Russell's impact right now, and this is where it's going to be interesting, is going to be made on special teams. He's kind of like Heath Farwell was for those early Pete Carroll Seahawks teams. Like, he was a linebacker, but really he was like the special teams guy. And I think that's what Brady Russell is. And you need somebody like that on that unit. We had him. We had Nick Bellore for a while. If you want to go way back, you had Kazavinsky and Kotovitis were guys that were, linebackers that quasi were more or less special teams kind of aces in their own right. Those are the things Brady Russell does that, you don't see on the stat sheet, is how he, gets down there and covers kicks and, is kind of that, inspirational voice that way, and how it affects the locker room inside. And that's where I think, they're going to need to eventually figure that out, because here's your big thing. You're going to have potentially, how many safeties are you keeping out of this group? You know, you're keeping Julian Love and Nicky Manwari, but you just drafted Bud Clark. So that gives you 3 right there. You got Ty Okada, who you brought back, who's going to be somehow in this roster. So there's 4. And then you also signed DeAnthony Bell and Rodney Thomas, who are both, in my opinion, quality starting safeties. So that gives you like 6 safeties. How are you keeping 6 safeties? You're not. So how does that number factor in? If you want to keep 5 of them, does that mean Brady Russell somehow gets taken off the roster equation? Like, that's where it's going to be interesting. But, you know, I think it's Brady Russell has a role that he does better than anybody else, and that's why he keeps hanging around in here. I do not know, Cool Breeze, if it's happening tonight or not. I applaud those guys for the amount of content they're still producing, given the downtime here. It's one of my favorite shows to watch. So hopefully they have a show tonight. Let's see what else. So I was right. Amy goes, that was the group she kept. Yep, I kind of figured as much. This is an interesting one. I just love having an elite gunner. Derek Young's impact is going to be interesting on how much it's missed, because that is what he was. He was such a good gunner. And this is where I look at a guy like a Ricky White. Can he be an elite gunner or one of these corners? You know, I know you. So Irv Charles is probably cut. Maybe. We'll see. This is where the conversation around that is going to be interesting, because Derek Young was such a good gunner. He was so fast. He was so big. Obviously, you look at the impact he had in the NFC Championship game alone. This is where it's going to be very interesting to see how Seattle chooses its gunners this year. That will be interesting. In Doczilla, I don't know if this is true, Doczilla. He goes, dealing with Garrett and maybe Aaron Donald. I know he put Darnold. Will be a fun watch. I don't need to see that. I'm good. Let me deal with Myles Garrett. And honestly, like, I know I put out a very hot take that got a lot of flack on Instagram and on my YouTube page when I said I didn't think the Rams were going to have a top 10 defense this year, and everyone jumped down my throat on that one. You know, and like they say, publicity is publicity, good or bad. It works. And there were a lot of views of that one. And I think the one thing, you know, to that point is the Rams, a lot of this has to go right. Like, it has to be the right mix. And I think that's one thing when you look at Seattle's defense. Yes, you've got some star power on it, but you don't have a bunch of stars. You don't have a bunch of superstars. I should be more specific. And this is where we kind of saw some of that with the LOB, right? The LOB you started to see when you lost the superstars and you didn't have a whole bunch of just good star level players, how that defense slowly started to erode it and fall apart. You also got to hope your DC can coordinate this group and do some things with it that's going to put them in positions to be successful. And it's going to be interesting, because I think one of the biggest things, and I know Matt Hasselbeck brought this up, and I couldn't agree more as an OC, if I know there's a defensive lineman that is an exceptional pass rusher, how do I mitigate his pass rush? I run the football right at him. And we just, you know, crack block him. We do a bunch of different things to wear him down, and then we run play action, because, again, play action makes defenses hesitate. This is where, yes, you can Myles Garrett is phenomenal if you're playing against teams that primarily run out of shotgun and hang out back there, like, you know, Lamar Jackson. You know, Aaron Rodgers likes to live out of shotgun. So does Joe Burrow. A lot of those offenses in the AFC North like to live out of shotgun. That's not the NFC West. McVay likes to be under center. Shanahan likes to be under center. Brian Fleury is going to like to be under center. And they like to run the football, and they like to run boots. They like to run play action from under center. It makes the, you know, defensive linemen's jobs more difficult, especially when you got tight ends like a Barner, Saubert, you know, Callerup that can chip and be good blockers and get out. It can mitigate some of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Brian goes, like Bryce said, happy wife, happy life. 80s wife ain't feeling it with him coming back. Yep, that's fair point. Fair point. Good point here, Cool Breeze. I want Darnold to come back so it makes us inevitable beating them down or beating them that much sweeter. Yeah, that's true. Mom and Pops goes, Derek Young has been on the back burner since he was a rookie. Offensively, 100% yes. Special teams wise, as a gunner, he was a very important part to this unit and why they were such a good unit this year, especially. But I agree, as an offensive weapon, he never really flourished much after that rookie year. A couple catches here and there, and that was kind of about it. But I agree with that. But on special teams, he was pretty impactful. Let's see. Jay Scott goes, that's how I felt coming away from your debate with Mookie. Mike McDonald's defense uses the talent we have. Pete required specific players and types of talent. Yeah, that's the one thing. And that was such a good show. That was such a good show with Mookie and debating that. I really enjoyed that show and that topic, because I think it's one that's going to be ever evolving, right? You look at that, the Seahawks defense and what they did with that LOB group, they were so good. And one of the biggest things I think that gets kind of maybe misunderstood about how simplistic that defense was yes, it was simplistic, but because they were so talented, we're talking like Hall of Fame level players, it was the fact that they would say, hey, we're going to run cover 3, but we know that they're going to do this potentially based on the look they're in. So instead of you doing what you traditionally would do in cover 3, you're going to delay it and you're going to wait and then you're going to go. And that's where you started to see some of the throw off for offenses early on, like 2012, 2013, 2014, right? Even into 2015. That's what you saw. Now 2015, obviously the seam started to get exposed with the tight ends where they would catch Seattle in that. Because there was a point in time from like 2015, I'd say to 2017 where Seattle could not stop a tight end that could run a vertical route down the seam for whatever reason. But that was what made them so unique and so special, where Mike McDonald's defense is like, they have to operate as a single organism more so than the LOB. Like the LOB did, but Mike McDonald's defense relies on them to operate as a single organism where they just like move and change, kind of like Jell-O and how you shake Jell-O and it just kind of goes back and forth, but it moves together. That's kind of how I view Mike McDonald's defense away. I know it might be a horrible analogy, but it's just, that's how the communication that has to be on point for them to shift post snap and all these different things. That's stuff that we never really saw that LOB team do because they didn't need to. And the NFL offenses at that time didn't require them to, right? And this is, what Mike McDonald's defense does is it's all the motions, all the shifts that offenses do. This is how his defense combats it by, it's okay, you shift to this, we're going to give you this look, you're going to assume this is what you're getting. And then post snap, like Kirk Cousins said, hey, they look like they're in this. And then as I'm about to throw, they shift and they catch me. That's something that, makes that defense unique in its own right. I think there's a very strong argument to be made that Mike McDonald's defense could go down when his tenure's up and his era of calling defense, it could go down as one of the greatest eras of defense ever and what he's able to do. So, Jay Scott, there's always room for Jell-O. That's fair. C-Town goes, Cam Chancellor wouldn't be as effective in today's game. Nick Eamon is built for today's game. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like Cam always was kind of an odd one in coverage. Like he was good, but he wasn't great. I think Nick Eamon you can do more things with 100%. Amy goes, there was a visual of the first US MNT game that showed a very similar defensive shift to what we do, Jell-O. Hey, if the analogy works and it visually gives you guys an understanding of how it all, like, I'm good with it. Go with it. Run with it. Maybe that'll be my next short thing, is me talking about how Mike McDonald's defense is like Jell-O. And I got to give a shout out, Josh Height. Obviously he works on the show here with me. He does an absolutely phenomenal job cutting up the shorts and doing all that stuff and putting them out onto the YouTube. So thank you again for that, Josh. But one other thing too, there is an Instagram page for the Hawk's Eye as well. So if you guys have Instagram, it is the Hawk's Eye Podcast. Go ahead, go follow it, go pump it out there. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up today's show with that. But again, I can't stress enough how much I appreciate all of you. coming in early on a Tuesday afternoon to check out the show. For all you guys in the States, have a safe and happy 4th of July. Enjoy all the fireworks and the festivities. I look forward to being back here in a little bit with you guys here after my break. And I will make sure on the YouTube page, on my Twitter, and on the Discord, if you're not in there already, I will make sure to put the link for where you guys can follow the games when they come out. They'll be live on those days. And you guys can check out what it's like when I coach instead of just talk about coaching. So, with that being said, everybody, if you haven't already, I'll put it up on the screen one more time. Scan the QR code. That'll take you to all things Hawks Eye. So check that out. And for anyone that's over on Twitter, there's 500 of you guys on my Twitter side. If you haven't, please, if you got a YouTube account, hop on over to the Hawks Eye podcast on YouTube. Give me a like, give me a subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. If you want to keep watching the shows on Twitter after you do that, I have no problem with it. But it just helps get my show out into the algorithm more. And there's so many great Seahawks content creators out there, from Hawk Blogger to Dan Viens to Brandon Kane to Brandon Nelson, the Seahawkers podcast, Corbin Smith with Locked On. There's numbers and numbers of them. Please, support them as much as you support me. We have a great content creator community here for the Seahawks, and I think it is the best in the NFL. So make sure you guys are supporting them as well. And if you want to check out other stuff, written work that you enjoy, head on over to Field Goals, Mookie and the team over there, which I'm a part of, and Josh as well. They do fantastic work writing articles over there as well. So with that being said, I appreciate all of you. Make sure you guys have that notification bar clicked for when I come back, so you guys get to see the first episode when I come back. But as always, as we say on the Hawks Eye, stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks. Have a good night, everybody.